Okay, so now what I'd like to do is I want to talk about guides, and guides are very interesting, and I'm painfully aware that you guys know all about guides, and that's great. But I think there are some tips and tricks that I can kind of share with you that'll help you see guides a little bit differently. So the first, of course, you know that you can just come up and click out guides and drag them. But I think one of the things that maybe you may not have understood, or perhaps you did, is that you can actually do two types of guides. There is the page guide, which is the standard guide that we just bring out like so. And then there is also what we would call a spread guide or a document guide or a pasteboard guide. And that goes and spans the length of the pasteboard. And so how can you drag those out? Well, it's simply by dragging them out and pulling them out onto the actual pasteboard. Whereas if I do a page, it's going to actually do it right in my area. Now, the other thing that's cool about guides is that they really are just nothing more than objects, and therefore can be treated like any other object. And I can select them and delete them right off my stage. I can have multiple guides on my stage, and if I hit Command Option G, because guides can be really complicated sometime where I can get a lot of them, it will select all of my guides on my stage, and I'd be able to grab a hold of them. So that's pretty cool, and I think that's a nice little feature that we can have. One of the things that gets really tricky is when you're pulling out a guide and you want to bring it right out to an exact tick point. It gets really hard to do that. You can kind of see I'm scrolling around, and if you can see my heads up display, my HUD, you can see that I'm getting 24 points, 3 picas. I'm sorry, 24 picas, 3 points. It's hard to get right on to the exact one that I want. So one of the ways that I can do that is, of course, I can come up to my X and Y coordinate, and I can say I want that at 25p and hit enter, and bang. Oops, I also had that selected, so that's not going to work. So I need to make sure I don't have my guide selected, meaning my text. So I'm going to select on that line, and you can see it's at 26 P, or 26 pikers, and 6 points. I can actually just hit on the 25 and 0, and bang, I'm right where I want. And that's very cool. That works really well. Another way that I can assure that I've got something where I want is I can actually click and hold down the shift key, and it's going to try and notice how I'm moving along. It's trying to snap to the nearest actual tick mark that it can. So instead of getting any additional leftover points as I'm dragging, you'll see that I'm jumping from 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. But then when I let go, look what happened, because I didn't actually jump it to that exact point. When you're dragging out, you want to make sure that you hold the shift key down until you get it exactly where you want it, and then let it go. And you can see that at that time I got it at 33. Just delete them off my stage. The other way that I can do that is I can actually just find the tick mark and double click on it, and bang, I get a guide right at that point. Now, again, you can see that I've got things are a little odd. So what if I wanted it right at 36? Well, once again, if I hold down and click on the tick mark by holding down the shift key, it actually does line right up. Ooh, that one didn't, did it? Or is that my finger off? No, it did. It did line up. Boy, that was my finger off. And so you can see that I can create a very, very interesting way of seeing things. Well, what if I'm bringing a guide out and I realize that what I really want to do is I also want to have a vertical guide. So I'm bringing out a horizontal guide. Well, you can see all I have to do is hit the Option key, and when I hit the Option key, the vertical guide pops out, and I now have a vertical guide. Same thing happens if I'm coming in and I'm doing a page guide. If I hit the Option key, I can switch between either the horizontal or vertical. So there is the vertical that I'm dragging out. Hit the Option key, and now it's a horizontal. And because I'm over the page area, it is actually switched from being a document or spread to a page guide. So that's pretty cool. Gives me a quick way of moving around. Remember, I'm just hitting the Option key. And it's a great tool and a great way of helping me see what's going on. So it gives me a great way of moving around. We already talked about I can change it. Well, but remember, because these guides are nothing but objects, I can actually duplicate them by just holding down the Option key and clicking and dragging, because it is just like any other object that I would create in InDesign. So it really doesn't matter what I'm doing. I can do multiples. I think I already said to you already, I can select them all by doing Command Option G, and I can select them all, and then I can delete them from my stage, and they're out of the way. Another trick that I can do is I can come out and I can bring out a guide. I'm going to bring it out and make it a spread guide, and I'm going to bring it out to 7 picas right there, and I'm going to leave it alone. And then the next thing that I can do is I can come up and I can go to Edit and Step and Repeat. And when I do Step and Repeat, I can look at this and I can go, well, how many more do I want? I'm going to make it 10. And then what's my vertical outlet that I want? Well, I'm going to make it, let's see what I'm going to make it, 1 pica. And you can see that, bang, it instantly created additional 10 lines for me right away, and using that Step and Repeat command. So that's a really cool way to handle things. Remember, Command Option G selects all, and then I'm going to delete them. The other thing that I thought that is important to share with you, and a great tip, is don't forget your layers panel. Let me bring this guy back in. And my layers panel is an important tool. And for example, what I think that you want to be thinking about is I'm going to click a new layer. I'm going to actually click on my layers property and keep that base layer as my base layer, which is a common naming convention for me. You can call it what you'd like. I always keep that base layer named as base, and then I'm going to jump up to my other layer here, and I'm going to call it a grid layer, because that's where I'm going to put my grid. I can actually come down and you can see I can't even begin to tell you how many colors I've got here. I'm going to select gold for the color of my layer, and you can see that my layer color has changed. And as you know, in Illustrator and in Photoshop, we can do the same thing. So by clicking on the double-clicking on the layer, we get the layer's properties, which would then in turn gives us the options that we can apply to a given layer. So it gives us the opportunity to understand what the layer looks like. Alright, so now with that said, I'm actually going to lock my base layer right now, because I just want to show you that I can actually put my guides on that completely separate layer. So I'm going to come out and I'm going to put this at I'm going to put it right at 12 picas, and I'm going to pull out another one, and I'm going to put it at 48 picas, maybe. There we go. And then I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to actually come over and put it at 12, but I'm going to just double click on it to show you that I can do it that way. And then I'm going to come over to 84 here and put over there, and you can see that I've got these guides, and they're on another layer. Now, why would I want to do that? Now I can actually turn off my layers, my layer, which hides my guides, which makes it easier for me to see what's going on. And remember, I can actually turn by hitting W, it's going to actually preview everything, put me into a preview mode, and bring it in so I can just focus on what's going on. And as a designer, one of the most important tools in your toolbox is learning how to self-edit, and this is a great way to help you do that. It helps you focus on just what you're doing. It kind of removes the clutter and allows you to focus just on what you're doing. Pretty cool. And I think that's an awesome kind of cool thing. The next thing that I wanted to do is I'm actually going to zoom in, and I'm just hitting Command plus on my keyboard, and then I'm holding down the space bar to move around, because what I want to do is click on one of these grids for you, and then right click and hit on ruler guides. And when I do, a couple of things happen, and I think that's kind of important. First, it comes in and it shows me what the color of my ruler guides are, and once again I can change change that color, and then now just that one guide is red. So if you're using guides to help you understand certain aspects and where you're going to place things, you can actually set the color of the guides. And of course, if you hit Command K, that will bring you into your preferences, and you can actually change the colors of all of your guides right in here. And change the color of the baseline grid and whatnot. And we're going to come back and look at this in a little while, but I can actually come in and change the color of things globally, if you will. So that's kind of cool. All right. The last thing is that one of the things that we have happen is the colors of the grid that we're creating. When they're not selected are the color of the layer. So if you're making multiple layers of grids for multiple purposes, you can actually, as I said, have multiple grids. So I'm going to add another grid here, grid 2, just for sake of argument. I'm going to make this grid color, line color green, and I can bring out another grid here, let's say like so. And then now what happens is, while the color of the grid itself, when I have the layer selected, the actual line itself, when I select them, you can see that they are actually that green, indicating what layer they're on. So I can put grids on multiple layers, and it's a great opportunity for me to sort my grids out.